Hi, Rick Ragosa here on another episode of Mastering the Guitar. So I hope you get your guitars ready. We're going to run through a quick tuning and just jump into some exercises and a little bit more information to try to help you figure out how to play this thing. So if you can start, we'll start with the top string, which is an E, and try to get it as close as you can. We're going to try some chords today. So the closer that you're in tune, a little better off the sound will be for yourself and the people around you. Here's an E, and an A, the D, G, B, and an E again. Okay? And it wouldn't hurt for you, of those of you out there that are just learning how to play and, you know, experimenting with posture and how to hold your hands and the sounds, you know, it doesn't hurt to get used to your instrument, hear the sounds, even the feeling. You can feel the vibrations through the body. Just get used, get in tune with your instrument. And it's the same way our focus is to get in tune with our hands, you know. Kind of feel it out, start getting comfortable with the thing. Experiment a little bit, you know, tilt it out a little bit, pull it in, put your arm right over. I like to leave my elbow just kind of on the back when I'm sitting down like this, so it just keeps my wrist free for freedom of movement. And as well, the left hand keeping the neck out sort of semi-forward. I have freedom of access to the top end or the bottom, whatever I need to do. Okay, and you want to try to keep it as natural as possible without restrictions and these guys who do this and hold it up or really low. Jimmy Page in the early days used to have his guitar down by his knees, and weird. And he got away with it, and for what he was doing, I guess it worked for him. But overall, and how we're looking at this is part of the success of learning how to play guitar or mastering the guitar is understanding what you're doing at all points in time and why you're doing them, okay? So now we got our instrument semi-tuned and we're kind of comfortable with it. I'd like to, again, as the pattern we've been creating through the last episodes, just cover a quick warm-up, some of the things that you can do. And these kind of drills work well, you know, you got some time, downtime, you're watching TV, well, pick up your guitar. There was a time when I practiced so much it used to bother everyone around me. My father, he'd stick his head out the door and, Rick, would you stop that chicken picking? And there was nothing I could do because just sitting there doing my drills, that sounds like chicken picking. So I took a big, like it was a big blanket, and I just shoved it into the sound hole to try to dampen the sound as much as I could, just so that I could get a guitar that I really don't need to hear. For the most part of it, you're just getting used to the feel, and the more that you concentrate on the relationship between the left and the right hand, just itself, the quicker it will be, you know, for you to pick up basic scales or chords or any of the application licks. Once you have a kind of a basic overall dexterity and a feel for the neck, it's much easier picking up riffs and learning how to play material. Okay, the basic guide or basic exercise number 1 is based on position playing, where there's 4 frets coinciding with the 4 fingers. Okay. So today we'll just stay in the 3rd position here, and again, recommended advice is being able to keep your 4 fingers down on any one string, lifting them on and off, moving to a next string, on and off. You know, you can go forward and back. All right. As far as learning techniques, you can overemphasize the motion, straighten your fingers right out, bring them in. Okay. And it's important that the more time you spend with this, and it is, you know, kind of based on logic, the better you're going to be off when it comes down to playing actual licks. Because the feel, the motion is all within the perimeters of the 6 strings and the some odd 20-some frets. So you want to be able to just have freedom of movement within those areas, okay? Now, invent some exercises of your own. We've got this perimeter in a basic position. 4 fingers on 6 strings, okay? And you can multiply that, and that would give you the number of how many individual little stops on that, okay? So for a variation exercise, let's try this. We've got the 4 fingers down. So with the first finger, just take it on and off and place it on each string, okay? Second finger. Now I'm going a little faster here to try to just get as much data in these 30-minute sessions as we can. All right, when you're practicing at home, I definitely encourage you to go a little slower. And actually, the more you concentrate on what the motion is exactly, the sooner you pick up on it, and the sooner it becomes a part of your articulate memory. And from that point, it's a reflex. Okay, so what we're really doing is just programming a vocabulary of reflexes, and that's what the guitar is all about. All the basic riffs and licks is things that you've done before, and then when you're playing a solo, you put all these licks or phrases together, and that's what you got in the basic solo. Okay, so from here there's a number of different things that we can do from this point. Okay, as a basic drill, okay, we can alternate the fingers as we go up, 1, 3, okay, and 2, 4, or, okay. And in fact, the thing is, it doesn't necessarily always, you don't always have to use your right hand. In fact, a lot of learning can be done just with the left hand, going slow, feel the fretboard, and this is the kind of practice that really is the most beneficial to any player, especially in the early stages as you're developing dexterity and strength. It doesn't hurt to do exercises away from the neck. Open up your hand, pull it in, open up, close the fists, both hands. As far as warm-ups, it's very good to just open up your fingers, stretch them out. You have to keep in mind, no matter how zealous you are at learning any instrument out there, that your fingers are attached to muscles, and they're like any other muscle, that you're going to have to get into warming them up, getting the blood to them. And if you don't, keep it in mind, over stressing your muscles creates fatigue and soreness, and sometimes there's times when I've played and I couldn't play for a couple of weeks because I just played so much, it was just too sore, and it actually physically hurt. So I've learned to channel my practice times down to 10-minute sessions. So I'll pick up the guitar, practice my drills, and I slowly warm up. And the next stage I get into a little bit more complicated drills, and a few warm-ups in that session, then I'm ready to play. If I'm playing live or whatever the situation is, my hands are warmed up and then they're ready to go where I send them, okay? And you'll find already, for those who've played for a while, when you first pick up the guitar, you're a little stiff and it feels foreign. Well, the quickest way to alleviate that is to try a couple drills, just a couple of warm-up drills, okay? Now, another thing that we can do here as far as the left hand's concerned is position your thumb behind the neck, somewhere in the middle is good, because we want to have freedom of motion. You want the fingers to have freedom of access to the fretboard without, if your thumb's up here, for example, as you see a lot of players doing some basic, playing, it's restricted, okay? And my advice used to be a little bit more assertive and used to insist with the students, because I just know that it's better for you. But I've left the choice, as far as this information, it's recommended advice. In the end, you choose your limits and you choose what goals you want to achieve, and from that point then it's up to you, okay? So just a minute on this before we get into how these notes combine into sounds, is you get yourself ready. Your fingers are, ready to apply. And this is a technique called hammer-ons, okay? And they're somewhere down the line related to Klingons, but they're called hammer-ons, a different family, okay? So from here, what a hammer-on is simply, you get your finger more or less in the ready position, and you apply pressure, okay, to the fret. All right, now the thing is, I had my right hand on to stop the sound. With the left hand, you'll hear a little sound, okay? And that's really what you want to aim for. Okay? Next string, same thing. Now, as far as variations on this drill, as you can see that I'm covering all the strings, I'm going forward and back. You have your hand in ready position. Okay, and that's basically called a hammer-on. Now, applying another technique called a pull-off, okay, we can combine that. The pull-off is when you have your hand and fingers already in position, and you pull off. And that's the means of striking the string. Okay, well from here, we can combine a hammer-on and a pull-off and get that dual sound, but I treat this, well actually for years, as a warm-up, okay? And now with a warm-up, it's interesting because we can change strings. Now keep in mind I'm going a little faster than you should for sure. Because the idea here is not to get speed and flashiness, but trust me, that will come. The closer that you concentrate and the more you concentrate on being accurate, having your, even with the right hand. I've spent the time doing the 1, 2, 3, 4 with the right hand. Same thing. Hammer on and pull off. Now eventually, actually when I was a little bit younger, I seen a video one time and Ted Nugent was doing these 8-finger pull-offs, hammer-on pull-offs, and I thought, man, that's pretty cool. I'd like to do that. So I started working on drills. Okay, and it's all cool and everything. But the important thing is that my motives for doing this, eventually it relates to sounds and flashiness and kind of cool stuff, but is primarily to get used to the area that I'm playing in. And my goals were to get as comfortable and as knowledgeable and as familiar with the whole playing process as possible, because I'd like to make the most of my time and abilities. And so part of that is simply that. Concentrating on the 6 strings, you can do kind of like sequential, 4, 3, 2, 1. Same thing going up. We can have, add a little and have a hammer-on in between there if you want. In fact, if we were in an area, and if you're ready for this, if those of you who are not, don't get frustrated that you can't do this. I'm ensuring the fact that you can, but if you adhere to the guidelines are being accurate, going slow, and making sure that you're not doing anything that you shouldn't. Wasted motion, having your fingers, all this, too much movement. If I can get away, maybe if I go like this, I might be able to do the first couple strings, but as I start getting up, my fingers are getting cramped. So then I have to pull my thumb down. Well, if I have to rearrange my pivot point, why don't I just keep it there at the beginning, and then I'm ready to go throughout the whole thing, okay? And you'll notice that for those of you who know well, the tunings, whatever the open string is, 12 frets higher, 12 half steps, or chromatic. Chromatic is half step increments. You reach an E again, or a B. At the 12th fret, it's the same. Note is the open. So for the sake of just the basic drill, we could hammer on. Okay? And use both hands to cover the 12th fret area. Okay, you catch that? And you can start with this one if you want. Okay, either way, the idea is position playing. You plant your finger, you pull off the lick or the phrase, whatever you're doing, shift to a new position. Okay, and the same thing with the right hand. You do the basic drills with just the right. Okay, so spend a little time. The more time you spend with this basic drill, traveling on each of the strings. Okay? Especially with the hammer-ons, overemphasize the motion. Okay, work it as a drill. 1, 2, 3, 4. The more you spend time with that, you'll notice that if you've been trying to keep up with that, your hands are probably feeling a little sore. Okay, so at this point, I would encourage you to get in the habit as these sessions continue over the next little while. Videotape them so you can stop and rest your hands. Don't do anything that you don't feel comfortable with and feel stressful. Stop. Let your hands rest. There's a lot of muscles involved with the fingers, the hands, the wrist, and the forearms. In fact, they're all involved. So treat this whole process as a learning conditioning process, because that's really what it is when you're learning how to play this instrument. You're conditioning the muscles necessary for motion, And you can do a lot when you're away from the guitar. Just, you got a couple minutes at a bus stop. Well, even you can do this discreetly so no one thinks you're, you know, kind of a nut. But work a few drills out. Keep your fingers motion. Independent control. That's what we want to do here. Okay? So now, this was basically designed to be warm-ups and drills. They do turn into sounds and necessary scales at a later date as far as the understanding that's complementary to it. Don't worry about that now. Get used to the fretboard. Okay? The next step and phase of learning is to know your major scale, because this is a diatonic instrument and it's arranged in accordance with certain whole steps and half steps, and the scale that it's naturally tuned to is in concert C, and it's called the major scale. Okay? The major scale in C is the fingers I'm using are 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. And I'm starting on a C note, which is the 5th string, 3rd fret in. Okay? And at the end of each of these sessions, we're going to include a box number that you can mail in, and there will be paperwork available and all these things written out in grid paper so that you can have an actual working copy in front of you that gives you the, it's called active mental imagery, so that you can see the shape in your mind and you can get used to what that shape looks like and be able to recognize it, because all the sounds that you hear correspond to shapes or forms. Okay? Pattern could be used. And so by getting used to the sounds that relate to the shapes or patterns, that's the connection between, you know, when you start getting into learning how to play some of these riffs from the guitar players, whatever band you're into, all those sounds, you learn them in related shapes. Every time I think of a certain song, you know, whether it's major, minor, whatever it is, it relates to a corresponding shape. And you can, you know, you can make sounds on this thing, but the key to understanding it and the success of building on one note at a time is understanding the major scale and how it relates to everything. Okay? Now, the last session we discussed a little bit about chords and triads. Chords, in simple definition, are a combination of notes. Okay? 2 or more notes played simultaneously. A C chord. It's a number of notes. Okay? Whatever it is. Okay? So, it can be complicated chords. But by understanding some of the basic, fundamental principles, it's easy. If you can remember phone numbers, you have the aptitude to figure out the most complex arrangement on the guitar. Okay? It's just a matter of time and being familiar. And sure, if you stumble through this, it could take years, but really, in 6 weeks, you can have a substantial amount of information and command of the instrument if you pay attention to what I'm saying and go slow. Drills are important. Don't practice for too long at one time. This way your body is clear. And if, in fact, you could sit there and, before you practice, take a minute just to clear your mind and focus on what you're doing, why you're doing it, okay? And I'll be able to explain that to you as we get into advanced stages with the paperwork in front of you. If we're playing in the key of C, then you clear your mind and you get into the components involved with the key of C, scales, chords, whatever it might be, okay? Now, the major scale, it consists of, you could say, relative numbers, okay? Always the note that you start with is number 1, okay? So in the key of C, we start with the C note, which is number 1, okay? So what's in the alphabet from A to G, what's the letter next after C, okay? And for those of you who aren't sure, C, it's a D, okay? Then it's E, F, G. After G, it repeats back to A, B, C. Okay? It always goes through 7 letters and then returns back to the whatever key it is. A ends at an A. Now that's Latin for 8 called octave. Okay? And refer to octaves. In jazz, guitar players like Wes Montgomery, and there's quite a few, use octaves to work for them, get a fuller sound, artistic expression. Octaves are really cool because actually once you can play octaves, the notes of the scale are in between, and so they become easier to pick out and a part of the framework, okay? So in the key of C, we've got the major scale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now it's important to understand how the numbers work. In the key of C, the chord patterns that are most commonly used are the 1, 4, 5. And we're going to be introducing the 1, 4, 5 in the first 5 keys and how to play relative minors and those kind of things as the time goes on. So in the key of C, as I'm trying to reinforce basic fundamental data here, our root note is a C, okay? And then we take that C and we go C, that's 1. D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, okay? Now for those of you who have never played guitar before, soak up the data, write it down, you know, start getting used to it. Those of you who are intermediate or advanced players, wherever you are, if you've been playing for a while and haven't a clue what you've been doing, well, this is what you've been doing. If you're in the key of C and you're playing a basic Creedon Clearwater tune or whatever it might be, but for example, anything, Proud Mary, any of those tunes, they're 1, 4, 5 cadences, okay? They're a combination of the first, fourth, and fifth chord of any scale. Doesn't matter what key you're playing in, but the important thing is the number relation, 1, 4, 5, okay? So for today, I want to look at showing you how to play the open chords for the 1, 4, 5 in the key of C, okay? So now we go down to the first position, and that means your first finger's in line with the first frets, and then the rest accordingly, second, third, and fourth, okay? Now how to play a C chord. What I'm going to do, it's going to be kind of these monkey see, monkey do things, okay? And they'll be on the sheets that will be available, and you might even have a chord book already that you can look up the key of C. There'll be a C chord, okay? Either way, however you get it, there's reasons why that chord's built that way, okay? And that leads us to a little bit of theory, and it's called triads, harmonies based on triads, which are numeric values placed to formula. Major is 1, 3, 5, okay? Now don't get this confused with picking the chords. This is how the actual chord is made. We go back to the scale, and that's why it's so important to know the scale. And if we're playing a C chord, we start with the root note, which is C, okay? So we've got C. Now we go 1, 2, 3. Now 3 in the key of C is a, all right, give you a sec to figure it out, but you count out C, D, E. So we've got C, E is a third. Now we want the 1, 3, 5 because it's major chords we're working with, and that's the formula for major chords. So what's 5? Well, we've got C, D, E is our third, F, and G is our fifth. So we've got C, E, all right, and there's our 5, which is the next string open. So starting on the 3rd fret, 5th string, we have a C. Going down to the 2nd fret, 4th string, we have an E, which is our 3rd, and the next string open is our G, it's a 5th. Now those 3 notes, played in combination, produce the C major triad, okay? Anywhere you play a combination of a C and G, it's going to be what they call a C major chord, okay? So, how to play that in the first position? We've got our 3rd finger on the 5th string, our 2nd finger on the 4th string, and then the next string is open, and then our 1st finger goes to the 1st string, 2nd string, 1st fret, 2nd string, and the 1st string is open, and you strum the bottom 5 strings, and that produces a C chord. Okay? Now the 4th chord in the key of C is an F. So we use the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there's our starting note, because it's an F. Now we're going to use that major formula, 1, 3, 5, to build an F chord. Okay, you with me? The F chord, major triad, is 1, 3, 5. And if you're not getting used to this by now, start writing this stuff down so that you can look at it after and say, oh yeah, that's what the guy's talking about. So in the key of F, we start with an F. So F is 1, G is 2, now after G it goes back to A, okay? F, G, A, so A is our 3rd, Now we go A, B, and C is our fifth. The major triad is 1, 3, 5. Any chord book, anything that you see that says F major, it's based off of an F major triad, and this is the information that should be conveyed to beginning students, but it usually isn't. And players have played for years and years and haven't a clue why they're playing that shape. Well, this information not only informs you, because it also equips you to make changes. First, let's look at the chord before we make changes. So we've used the major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and found where our 4 chord is. So we start there, F. Now we've got, this is where it gets interesting, because then we use the major scale over the F note to figure out the notes that we're going to need. We've got F, that's just 1. Then we go F, G, A, which is 3, okay, B, C, which is the 5, all right? Now we put those together, and we're playing in the first position, so we're going to apply these shapes to the first position. But keep it in mind, under this approach to music that I've been using for, somewhat 20 years, it equips you with the information that if you just had the guitar grid in front of you, any combination of an F note, an A note, and a C will produce an F chord. Any combination, okay? It doesn't matter the arrangement, it matters on the content, okay? Major chords are 1, 3, 5, okay? So we've got F, A, C, and then F again. So if we look at the left hand, we've got the same type of shape as the C chord, only we drop them down a string. Now the first finger here has to cover the 2 bottom strings. Okay? And that's the F chord. We've got the C chord and the F chord. 1, 4, 5. Okay? So there's the first chord, C, D, E, F. There's your 4th chord. Now let's get on to the 5th chord. Well, let's figure that out. In the key of C, it's C, D, E, F, G is our 5 chord, okay? So then we shift, our root note now becomes G because we want to figure out the triad for G. The major formula is 1, 3, 5, okay? So in the key of G, what would that be? Well, guess what our 1 is? G, all right? So we start with a G, and then we count along the scale again. And, this might be a little bit of a rush at first, but you get used to this. And it's very interesting. I had this conversation just the other day with someone. All the languages there are in the world, you can just go and, be totally confused and not be able to figure anything out. You might not be able to understand money exchange, any of that. But anywhere in the world, you meet another individual and you talk music and numbers, they understand completely what you're talking about. Because a fifth to the Japanese is the same to a fifth to the Americans, which is the same as a fifth to the East Indians, okay? A fifth is a fifth, and it's common knowledge. Music is the most universal language that is around because it's the same for everyone. Everything is the same. Now, the way they might write it down and the words they put under is different. Well, that is still irrelevant. The staff, and if we were learning theory and the notes on the staff, it's the same in any dialect, any nationality, all over the world. It's the same piece of music. If I were to hand someone who doesn't speak a word of English some music but can play, he would understand completely what those notes mean, okay? So it's kind of cool, and this is where the value of this information comes in because it's numbers. It's relating the notes to numbers. Now in the key of C, we've got 1, 4, 5, C, F, and G, and now we go to the G note and figure out the G triad. G is 1, G, A, B is 3, C, D is 5, okay? 1, 3, 5, G, B, D, and now we look at the guitar, first position, and find the combinations of the notes in the first position. Now a G is on the top string, 3rd fret. The second finger goes to the next string, okay, that's our B, and the next string open is a D. Then we've got G is open, B is open, and then your 4th finger down here, now it might be a rush for you now, but don't worry about it, you'll get it, plays a G. And there's a full G chord. So at first you might have to hold your hand for a second and keep it there, and what I'd recommend as far as learning these chords is play the C chord, okay? Now lift your finger on and off a few times so that you start getting used to what the C chord shape feels like. Same with the F chord. Get the shape, take your fingers on and off a few times, get the feel of an F chord. Same with the G, okay? And another thing as far as applying this is concentrate on going right to the points where you're playing. Try not to take your hand off and fuddle around. If I'm going to a C and I'm going to an F, I want to cover the least amount of distance, okay? So remember, the key of C, it's 1, 4, 5, C, F, and G. And next time we get together, we're going to look at the key of G. And remember that everything relates to numbers and patterns, so just rest in that. It all speaks for itself. But start getting used to your major scale and keep up with the finger exercises, because from there is the whole key to being able to figure this out and being able to play it. Okay? I hope this has been informative. The box number is 369 at Community 10, and label your envelopes Mastering the Guitar so we know where to send them. And we'll catch you next time on Mastering the Guitar.